Hello everyone. Hello to qualitative research course. In this course we will continue talking about research and in particular qualitative research. I think all of you came across quantitative research last year. In this course we will talk about qualitative research, which is something different from quantitative research in many aspects. In quantitative research, if you remember from the last year, you were talking about numbers, you were talking about counts, you were talking about surveys, you were talking about sample size calculation. In this course, we will talk about all of these issues, but in relation to different type of research, which is a qualitative research. Which can you see from its name, it's qualitative, it's mainly related to quality. While quantitative, it's from its name, it's related to quantity, which means numbers. In this course, we will talk about several different types of qualitative research. We have 5 main types of qualitative research. As you can see, as you will see in the syllabus that has been uploaded on the e-learning on the Moodle. My name is Dr. Rania Ibsul. I am from Family and Community Medicine Department in the School of Medicine. I will be teaching you this course this semester. We will take the theoretical material in this lecture, and we will start applying what we have learned in this semester and in the next semester, and apply this knowledge. You will be able to write a qualitative research proposal. You will be able to read a qualitative paper and comment about the methods used in these papers. We will talk about qualitative research. What is the benefits, what is the advantages of qualitative research over quantitative research, what are the limitations of qualitative research. So, and many other points that you will be learned in this course. We will talk about also on this slide about what is the recommended textbook that you will be using in this course. The learning objectives from this introductory lecture is to recognize the meaning of research design. And I think you already covered that in the quantitative course, but we will recap on this briefly in this lecture. Research methodology and research methods. Methodology and methods are two different terms, and you need to differentiate between them at this stage. What is the methods and what is the methodology? When we say methodology, how it's different from methods. Secondly, we will recognize the key characteristics of qualitative research. What is the key features? What are the key features of qualitative research? Thirdly, an important point that you will find almost in every book talking about qualitative research is how to distinguish or how to differentiate between qualitative and quantitative methods in research. How quantitative is different from qualitative research. You need to differentiate between both of them. So, what are the advantages of quantitative research? What are the advantages of qualitative research? What are the limitations of quantitative research? And what are the limitations of qualitative research? You will be able, after this lecture also, to describe qualitative research approaches, which means designs. We have several types, as we said, from qualitative research. I think many of you is familiar with what we call case study. Case study can be considered as one type of qualitative research. We will talk about also grounded theory, where you will be able to generate a theory from qualitative data collected. So you need to collect qualitative data to generate theory about a particular issue. So grounded theory is another type of qualitative research. We will talk about phenomenology, ethnography. All of these are designed from qualitative research. Fifthly, you will be able to describe methods of data collection and analysis in a qualitative study. So when you want to conduct a qualitative study, what are the types of data collection that you will use? For example, let's say in quantitative research. In quantitative research, I think most of you is familiar or used survey or questionnaire. Questionnaire where it consists of several questions, and these questions will be answered by participants in your study, and after that you will start doing like counting of percentages of frequencies to do analysis for these questions. In qualitative research, it's something different. While you are going to collect qualitative data, qualitative data, it's mainly related to texts, as we said, it's words. You need to collect text, and this text you need to analyze them in a particular way, and we will talk about that in the next lectures in detail. In details. How can we analyze qualitative data collected? We can also in this lecture discuss the linkages between selection of method and types of research questions. What we need to know in this course that the research questions that can be answered by qualitative research design is different from the types of research questions that can be answered by quantitative research. In quantitative research, as I think most of you know, that you start asking how many, how much, or what is the relationship, what is the association between two different variables, right? In qualitative research, the research questions is something different. You need to explain why this phenomenon happened, for example. How this phenomenon happened. So you need to describe the process, which is not achievable by quantitative research. In quantitative research, you can just talk about numbers, counts, without talking about in-depth exploration of particular phenomena, which we can do by qualitative research. And what you need to know also in this context, that in quantitative research we can do both of them. We can do separate study, as you did in the previous lectures, in the previous course, quantitative research only. We can do also qualitative research in an individual study. What we can do also is to do both studies, I mean quantitative research and qualitative research in the same study, and in this case we can call it as mixed method study or mixed method research, which can be abbreviated as MMR, and we will have a separate lecture regarding this point in this course. Near the end of this course we will talk about mixed, after we finish the qualitative research in general, the characteristics of the qualitative research and so on. We will talk about types, mixed method research, how can we mix qualitative and quantitative. And we'll give you an example now. For example, we did an quantitative research, for example, and we get particular numbers regarding one of the questions. And we need to explain why this result. We are wondering why this result. So in order to do in-depth exploration of this result, we can do qualitative research by making interviews with some participants. So it can complement. So one of the most important advantages of doing this mixed method research is it's a complementary advantage. So this is the difference between the research questions that can be answered by qualitative research and by quantitative research. When we talk about quantitative research, we talk about how many, how much, what is the relationship, what is the association between two different variables. While we talk about qualitative research, we are talking about how this issue happened, why this issue happened. We will discuss that in this lecture and in the following lectures, inshallah. Again, lecture outline. We will talk about definition of research and research design, definition of qualitative research, and there are many definitions of qualitative research and many books about qualitative research. We will talk about qualitative versus quantitative research, data collection in qualitative research, sampling in qualitative research, rigor. We will talk about this concept, which is a very important point in the context of qualitative research, in particular rigor and trustworthiness of qualitative research, and feasibility of the research project. What is the meaning of the feasibility of the research project? There are several terminologies, several definitions that you may find difficult in the beginning of this course, but I think throughout the course, throughout the semester, you will be more familiar, you will be more interested in these topics. You will be also be able to throughout the course you will be able to read a qualitative paper. I will give you some qualitative papers. Papers that have been done using qualitative research design, and you will be able to read them, to read the methods in particular, to see how these methods are used, to apply what we have learned in the class to these papers, which is a very important point. You can do what we call quality assessment of these papers. You can judge the methods used in these papers. Regarding the data collection in qualitative research, there's a separate lecture. We'll talk about it in brief in this lecture, but there is a separate lecture about it. It will be more detailed. Definition of research. What is research? Research is defined as a planned course of action. So a planned course of action, so it's an action consists of several steps that aims to understand a phenomenon. We need to comprehend a phenomenon from particular aspects. And we have a research questions, and we need to find answers to those research questions. So mostly when we want to do a research, we did what we call a literature review on this research. Literature review, we read the previous papers, the previous works on this particular issue. We can write a proposal, and I think most of you wrote a proposal in the quantitative research course. In this proposal, it has several sections. It includes, you start by your title, your introduction, literature review, research questions or aims and objectives. Then you start talking about the methods, which will we talk about it in this course. in detail your method, whether it's qualitative or quantitative. You need to talk about these methods in detail. You need to talk about your research design. You need to talk about your sample or your participants. You will talk about the type of sampling that you will use in this study. You will talk about how you will collect data in details. You will talk about how you will analyze this data. You will talk about ethical considerations that you will be aware while doing this study. So there is also a separate lecture about ethical considerations, which is a very important point. And you will see throughout the course that the ethical considerations in qualitative research, it's more complex than ethical considerations that you saw in quantitative research. So as we said, qualitative research, it could be quantitative, research in general could be qualitative, could be quantitative, and could be, we can mix them together and do qualitative and quantitative in the same study and to answer the same research questions in what we call mixed method research. So as we said, all research, whether quantitative or qualitative research, in both types of research, we have a research problem or a research question, and we need to look for answers for these research questions or research problems. Also, in both type of research, whether quantitative or qualitative, we have, or the researchers used a predetermined group of procedures or what we call methods to get these answers to the research problems. So we are talking about what we call methods or procedures or techniques or tools that we use. For example, in qualitative research we use interviews, in quantitative research we use surveys. So these are the tools or procedures that we are talking about. And in this context, we need also to understand what is the difference between methodology and methods, and the differentiation between them. We will talk about the difference between methodology and methods in the next slide, and we will also talk about it in details in the next lecture. Also, in both types of research, the researchers gather data and produces findings that were not determined in advance. So these are the features which are common in all research, all types of research, whether quantitative or qualitative research. As we said, again, research design, it is the blueprint for performing the research. When you design, and in your proposal you will write your research design, or it can be said as the scheme or action plan for achieving the objectives of the research, which is research questions. So research questions should be finalized before deciding the research design. As we said, as the qualitative research answer questions different from the quantitative research, we need to finalize our research questions before decide which design we need to use in our research. If you are talking about how and why, we will go toward the qualitative research. If you are talking about how much, how many, what is the relationship, what is the association between two different variables, we will talk about quantitative research. Another definition for research design, all of these in this slide, as you will see, they are different definitions, and you can see in research in general that every concept has many definitions, many of definitions. So you can choose whatever you are comfortable with. Research design could be defined as the logical sequence that connects the empirical data to a study initial research question and ultimately to its conclusion. It includes how the study will be conducted, meaning the methods that you will use, type of data that will be gathered. You will gather qualitative data or quantitative data. The means, or the means could be said in other contexts as the methods in some box, which are the tools, techniques. Let's give you an example about this. For example, the survey. It's considered as a mean for collecting data. We will talk about interview. which is another mean for collecting data. Sample size. You were collecting your data and you were calculating your sample size in quantitative research using some equation. In qualitative research, when you want to calculate your sample size, it's a totally different approach. And there are many types of sampling in qualitative research you will be familiar with in this course. And research setting. The meaning of research setting, it's the place that you will conduct your research in. For example, the hospital, clinic, primary healthcare center, maybe a particular ward in the hospital. It is setting, or what they call it as a research setting or research context. You wanted to collect data. The setting could be as maybe maybe also related to the place you will conduct your research in. As we said in the introduction of this lecture, we will talk about the difference between research methodology and methods. From the name methodology, when you add OGY to any word, it means the science of. So research methodology is the science of methods. What does that mean? It is the science of choosing or selection of particular methods. It is the umbrella under which methods reside. So you could say it as the justification, the philosophical justification for using particular methods. So it is the pathway or approach of action that justifies the selection and employment of certain methods. Why I will be using these methods. On the other hand, research methods, it's the means, or what we could say as the tools of execution of the research. Which means, what are the data collection tools that I will use in my research? For example, survey is the research method. Interview is another type of research method. So those are two important concepts you need to be familiar with throughout this course. And they are very important for the SEC2 exam. So qualitative research, from its name, from the roots of its name, qualitative, it's related to quality concepts, while quantitative research is related to quantity. So qualitative research refers to quality, where problems answered without generally focusing on quantity as in quantitative research. They are descriptions. They are words, texts. These words or texts are coming from interviews, discussions, as you will see in focus group discussions, and or even observation. However, in quantitative research, we are talking about quantity. We are talking about numerical data that can be analyzed using statistical analysis. So this can take us to the different questions that can be answered between both types of research. When we talk about what is the nature of this for equality, which is qualitative research, how much, how many for quantity or quantitative research. So again, quality refers to what, how, when, where, and why of a thing. Qualitative research refers to the meanings, concepts, definitions, characteristics, symbols, and description of things, which is the idea behind equality and the difference between equality and quantity. So, qualitative research provides a holistic view for the social phenomenon. So holistic view means comprehensive view. When you conduct an interview or a focus group, you can explore particular phenomenon, particular event in detail, providing comprehensive view or what we call holistic view. So the word holistic, when you see the word holistic, you can understand that it's mainly related to qualitative research. One of the important characteristics that you can find in almost every book or every paper in qualitative research, that it provides a holistic view for the social phenomenon. Qualitative research answers how question rather than how many, as in quantitative research. So it looks at X in terms of how X varies in different circumstances rather than how big X or how many X's there are. Qualitative research seeks to understand a given research problem from the perspective. Perspective means from the viewpoint, which you will see this word frequently throughout the course. The perspective of the local population it involves. The meaning of that, it reflects on the types of sampling that you will use in qualitative research. Types of sampling, as you will see in the next slides, in the next lectures, it depends on what we call purposeful sampling in qualitative research. Purposeful for the purpose means. So you collect data from population who are experts in this particular topic. So for example, we talk about you need to talk about nursing care, for example, and medical wards. So you are going to interview nurses who are employed in this particular medical ward. It is effective in obtaining culturally specific information about values, opinions, perspectives, behavior, and social context. So the word context, and as you will see in this course, that the word context is very important in the context of qualitative research. So it's qualitative research also describes how people experience a given research issue. So qualitative research offers unique opportunities for understanding complex situations. Again, there are some terms or some words you will see them throughout this course, which is different. I think you did not see that in quantitative research course. When you talk about holistic, in the previous slides, we are talking about qualitative research. When we talk about context, we are talking about qualitative research. When we talk about complex phenomena, understanding complex phenomenon, when you may be asked by someone what is the best research design that you can use to understand a complex phenomenon or complex event or complex situation, it's more directed toward using qualitative research. So qualitative research seeks to understand the phenomenon under study in the context of the culture or the setting in which it has been studied, which is called naturalistic design. This is the meaning of naturalistic. Naturalistic, it is studying the phenomenon in its particular setting, which is again one important feature of qualitative research. When we see adjectives like rich, deep, thick, all of these words or terms are most commonly used in relation to qualitative research more than quantitative research. Because, as we said, we are generating quality data, we are generating textual data, words, from interviews and focus groups, and we can use these data, analyze them to gain an in-depth understanding of this particular phenomenon. Here, in this slide, we can gain some view about what we mean by qualitative perspective. Here's an example. I want to understand the world from your point of view. This is what is the researcher talking with the participants. I want to know what you know in the way you know it. So your experience on this issue. I want to understand the meaning of your experience, to walk in your shoes, to feel things as you feel them, to explain things as you explain them. Will you become my teacher and help me understand this particular issue? So the main idea behind the qualitative research that you, for example, you will do an interview with someone, ask the participants many questions in regarding to the topic under investigation to gain a deep understanding of this issue. Again, major characteristic of qualitative research is that it enables a researcher to understand the social phenomenon, the meanings attributed to them by participants in the social setting or context in which they occur. The aim of qualitative research is to identify the meaning of a social phenomenon, the way the participant experiences it and also perceive it. In this slide, we will talk about in more detail about characteristics of qualitative research. And we will talk about every point in the next slides. And characteristics of qualitative research. The focus in qualitative research is on process, understanding, and meaning. The researcher is the primary instrument of data collection and analysis. This is a very important point about qualitative research, where the researcher is the primary instrument of data collection and analysis. It depends principally on the researcher, and you will see that and how the researcher will collect data. The analysis also depends on the researcher. The process of qualitative research is inductive. What is the meaning of inductive? We will talk about that in the next slides. And we will see how qualitative research is different from a quantitative research, where the quantitative research is deductive, while qualitative research is inductive. Firstly, initially, we can say that inductive is mainly related to something, inducing something or generating something. And in context of qualitative research, we are talking about inductive means generating something. We'll talk about this thing in the next slides. The product is richly descriptive, so we are talking about rich, deep, thick understanding of particular phenomena. In contrast to quantitative research, where we only talking about numerical data and quantifying the problem, rather than richly describing them. So, regarding the first point, qualitative research focuses on meaning and understanding. Qualitative researchers are interested in how people interpret their experiences, how they construct their words, what meaning they attribute to their experiences. So Patton is one of the leading authors in the field of qualitative research. Qualitative research, as said by Patton, is an effort to understand situations in their uniqueness as part of a particular context. We focus on the word context here and the interactions there. This understanding is an end in itself, so that is not attempting to predict what may happen in the future necessarily. There's no prediction in qualitative research as we can do in quantitative research. but to understand the nature of that setting, of that context. What it means for participants to be in that setting, what their lives are like, what goes on for them, what their meanings are, what the world looks like in that particular setting. And in the analysis to be able to communicate that faithfully to others who are interested in that setting. So the analysis strives for depth understanding. So a key point in qualitative research is the depth of understanding. And in this context, we can, in general, talk that qualitative research is exploratory in nature, where we're exploring particular issues. So, as we said, we move on to focus on meaning and understanding. So we need to understand what are the participants understand about the topic under study, not the researcher. So the key concern is understanding the phenomenon of interest from the participants' perspectives, not from the researcher perspective. This is sometimes referred to as the emic or insider perspective versus the etic or outsider's view. In qualitative research, you need to be familiar with those two terms, emic or etic. Emic means insider's view. Insider's view means the participant's perspective or participant's view regarding this particular issue. So as you can see in the figure here, this is the perspective. Emic perspective means how members of a given culture, let's say members of given culture, give it other name, which is participants, perceive their world. So when you make an interview with participants, you are going to understand the emic perspective, the insider's perspective, while etic perspective, how non-members of a group interpret behavior of a given culture. So the emic perspective or insider perspective is related to qualitative research, while the etic perspective corresponds with the quantitative research, where the researcher interprets the findings of the surveys, for example. So in this context, you need to be familiar with the emic perspective, as we explained in this slide, and the etic perspective. You need to differentiate between them and know which one corresponds to quantitative research and which one corresponds with the qualitative research. Again, emic perspective corresponds with qualitative research, while etic perspective corresponds with the quantitative research. The second feature of qualitative research, as we said, researcher as a primary instrument for data collection and analysis. A second characteristic of all forms of qualitative research is that the researcher is the primary instrument for data collection and analysis. Since understanding is the goal of this research, as we said, focus on process and understanding, the human instrument, which is the researcher, which is able to be immediately responsive and adaptive, would seem to be the ideal means of collecting and analyzing the data. Other advantages are that the researcher can expand his or her understanding through non-verbal as well as verbal communication, process the information immediately, clarify and summarize material, check the respondents for accuracy of interpretation, and explore unusual or unanticipated responses. So through the qualitative research, when there's something emergent, things that can happen while you are doing your research, so you can ask the participant about these emergent issues to gain in-depth understanding. You can ask them to clarify, you can ask the participant to explain particular points that emerge during the interview or focus groups, for example. We can say, like, there's a process also on qualitative research that we will talk about it later, when you finish your qualitative research, you finish your interviews and write your interviews, write your transcript, you can return this transcript back to your participants for comment. They can give you comments on your writing, they can give you comment or correction. For example, you may interpret some points in a different, you may understand it in a different way from what they were intended to say, for example. So they can comment or do correction for your transcripts. And this process is called member checking. Member mean participants, and checking, they can check your transcript and do some comment or correction on them, or what we call participant validation, which is a very important, which can increase the trustworthiness of qualitative research. Third point about the qualitative research is it is an inductive process. So often, qualitative researchers undertake a qualitative study because there is a lack of theory or an existing theory fails to adequately explain a phenomenon. So one of the main purposes of qualitative research is you don't have a theory for a particular issue, and theory is very important to understand some topics. And there's a lacking, and the literature lacks such a theory, and you need to generate a theory. You cannot generate a theory using quantitative research. You need to do qualitative research to generate a theory. This is what we call inductive process. Inductive process means using qualitative research to generate a theory for a particular issue. So again, another important characteristic of qualitative research is that the process is inductive, which means the researchers gather data to build concepts, hypotheses, or theories rather than deductively testing hypotheses as in positivist quantitative research. So here we come to the important point that we talked about in the beginning of this lecture. Deduction versus induction. Deduction can be done. We have a theory already established theory, and we need to test this theory. This can be done using quantitative research, while in qualitative research, it's an inductive process where you will generate a theory from the collected data. So bits and pieces of information from interviews, observation, or documents are combined and ordered into larger themes. This is also another important word. You will see it frequently in any qualitative research book or papers. Themes, it's related to thematic analysis, which is the main approach that can be used to analyze qualitative data as the researcher works from the particular to the general. So, from the particular to general, as we said, in qualitative research, we start from the piece of data, which are particular, then we go to general to generate a theory. While in quantitative research, we start from the general, which is the theory, to test these data or test already established theory or hypothesis using this data, not to generate a theory from these data. Again, rich description of the end product. The product of a qualitative inquiry is richly descriptive. Words and pictures rather than numbers are used to convey what the researcher has learned about a phenomenon. There are likely to be descriptions of the context, the participants involved, and the activities of interest. In addition, data in the form of quotes from documents, field notes, and participant interviews, excerpts from videotapes, electronic communication, or a combination of these are always included in support of the finding of the study. You will see throughout the course that, and if you read a qualitative paper, that under each theme you can put a supporting quotation from what the participants already said about this particular theme, supporting in the words of the participants, which can increase the validity of your findings. So these quotes and excerpts contribute to the descriptive nature of the qualitative research. So in this table, we can see the difference or differentiate between qualitative research and quantitative research. As we said, the qualitative research is inductive, where we generate theory using qualitative research, and quantitative research is deductive. Qualitative research is subjective, quantitative research is objective, and we will talk about this point later on. Holistic is related to qualitative. Purposeful sampling, or what we call number probability sampling, and we'll talk about that later as well. Not focused on generalization as in quantitative research. Qualitative research aims at understanding new perspectives, while quantitative research depends on aims at truth or scientific acceptance. Qualitative research depends on what we call case studies, content, and pattern analysis, or as we said, it depends on thematic analysis. While in quantitative research, we are talking about statistical analysis of the numerical data collected. Qualitative research focuses on words or texts. Quantitative research focuses on numbers. In this slide, another table you can go through for the difference between qualitative and quantitative research. In this slide also, the difference between qualitative and quantitative research, which is similar to what we talked about in the previous tables, in the previous slides. You can have a look through it. This slide again, difference between qualitative and quantitative research. And as we said, I want to focus on the second point, which is about ethical consideration, which is often more complex in qualitative research more than in quantitative research. And we will have a separate lecture regarding ethical consideration in the context of qualitative research, which you need to be familiar with. And you can see in every paper, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, a section that includes ethical consideration or ethical concerns or ethical aspects, where it starts from submission of proposal to get the IRP from the hospital or whatever context that you need to conduct your study in, to getting your approval. All of these are under ethical consideration. Why we use qualitative research? Qualitative research uses the limitations and the criticism of quantitative approaches have always been taken as a starting point to good reasons why qualitative research should be used. So there are several limitations for quantitative research approaches, and these limitations were the starting point to start use qualitative research. Qualitative research emphasizes that human beings should be studied as agents capable of self-reflection and giving meanings to their actions. So, as a qualitative research depends on interviewing people and to see their or to understand their perceptions regarding particular topic. So they consider people as an agent capable of self-reflection on particular topic and giving meanings to their actions. So it depends on the experience of the people regarding topic under investigation. So the essential features of qualitative research. Firstly, perspectives of the participants and their diversity, reflexivity of the researcher, different approaches and methods used in qualitative research, subjectivity is a very important and essential feature of qualitative research, focus on the whole, holistic picture. The methodology is flexible because it may use multiple methods to examine the same question or area. So there's a flexibility in qualitative research use where we can use or combine different research methods, for example, qualitative and quantitative together to get a better understanding of a particular topic. So we can use what we call triangulation, and there are several types of triangulation. We'll talk about them later on. Iteration, and we'll talk about iteration also. Qualitative research can complement quantitative data. For example, a qualitative phase of research might precede quantitative data collection in order to explore a new idea, a new area, to generate hypotheses, or to develop data collection instruments. So we can use a qualitative data. The idea behind this, the point that we can combine qualitative and quantitative data together, either quantitative can precede the qualitative or qualitative can precede the quantitative. Both of them, we will cover this on next method research lecture, and they have different, both of them have different names. When quantitative precede the qualitative or qualitative precede the quantitative, they call it sequential mixed method research, but each of these has like different purpose. One of them is explanatory and the other one is exploratory. And we'll talk about that in details in next method research lecture. So one of the most important features of qualitative research is it is described as a naturalistic design. Naturalistic design means that it took place in real-world setting rather than in a laboratory, and whether was being observed and studied was allowed to happen naturally. So it happens in explore particular issue in natural real-world setting. And another important feature also a naturalistic inquiry. The investigator does not control or manipulate what is being studied. So they studied in qualitative research, we study a particular event or particular phenomenon in its place without making control or manipulation of other variables, as we did in experiments. So in experiments, we are making control or manipulation of several variables in the context, while in qualitative research we did not intervene, uh, we do not manipulate or change any of these variables. We just study the phenomenon as it is in its context, in its natural context. This slide uh, talk, uh, talks about the purposes of qualitative research. Qualitative research aims to describe particular phenomenon or particular event to provide a description for this particular issue. So you are going to understand. So the purposes of qualitative research include also in-depth understanding of a particular issue, explaining. So it's an explanatory, identifying, for example, identifying factors that impact on some issue, or by identifying factors that impact on safety culture in healthcare, for example, to develop and generate. What do you mean by generate theory? So in quantitative research, as we said, that we have an already established theory or conceptual framework, and you want to test this framework in your quantitative research. While in qualitative research, you can generate a theory using qualitative data, and this can be happened in one example of or one form of qualitative research, which is named ground theory. Ground theory is one form of qualitative research, and we'll talk about that in a separate lecture. And this ground theory, you can generate theory for some, for example, topic that doesn't have any existing theory in the literature. So to generate a theory is one part of the qualitative research. So there are several types of qualitative research. We have 5 main types of qualitative research. First, we start with ethnographies. Ethnography, the researcher studies an intact cultural group in a natural setting over a prolonged period of time by collecting primarily observational data. The research process is flexible and typically evolves contextually in response to the lived realities encountered in the place. So you are going to study a particular culture in depth. So the researcher in ethnography will be a part of this culture. He or she will engage him or herself within this culture to understand their behaviors. This is what we call ethnography, and it depends on different data collection methods, one of which is qualitative research. You can do an interviews with those people that you are dealing with. You can doing observations and collect these observational data and analyzing them to get an in-depth understanding of this particular behavior of this culture. The second form of qualitative research is case study. Case study researcher explores in depth a program or event, a process, or one or more individuals. So, in case study, you are going to study a particular event or phenomenon in its natural context. So, you need in case study to have a context. You need to be bounded by a context. A case study. For example, when you study one hospital, you can, for a particular issue, you can consider it as a case study. When you need to, for example, for one patient, for example, you can do it on one patient or multiple patients. Even if you do this case study on one patient, it can be considered as a case study. So it will lead to an in-depth understanding. For example, if you want to do a case study about patients regarding some particular issue, you are going to collect data, multiple sources of information regarding this patient to get in-depth understanding for the issue that you need to understand about it. So the hallmark of case study is that it requires collecting of data from multiple sources of information. Thirdly, narrative research. It's a form of inquiry in which the researcher studies the lives of the individuals and asks one or more individuals to provide stories about their lives. So from its name, it's stories. So you are going to understand particular things by getting a story, by asking the persons to to speak about their lives, for example. So you need to do what we call narrative research. Phenomenological research. The researcher in phenomenology, it's called sometimes phenomenology, identifies the essence of the human experiences concerning a phenomenon as described by participants in a study. So you need, for example, to understand or to explore nurses' experiences in communicating with patients and their families in the intensive care unit. So you are going to do an in-depth interviews with nurses working in intensive care unit in a particular setting. So What marks or the hallmark of phenomenology, from its name, phenomenology, phenomenon, to understand the phenomenon. So understanding the lived experiences marks phenomenology as a philosophy as well as a method, and the procedure involves studying a small number of subjects through extensive and prolonged engagement to develop patterns and relationship of meanings. The most basic philosophical assumption was that we can only know what we experience by attending to perceptions and meanings. So we have a separate lecture and individual lecture to understand in depth more phenomenological research and taking further examples regarding this type of qualitative research. Ground theory. The researcher attempts to derive a general, abstract theory of a process, action, or interaction grounded in the views of participants in a study. This process involves multiple stages of data collection and the refinement and interrelationship of categories of information. So, we will, the main purpose of ground theory is to generate a theory, and we will have a separate lecture for ground theory as well throughout the course. A sample of qualitative research question on how can you construct qualitative research question from Kurzweil 2009. You can start your research question by how or what is the story for narrative research, meaning of the phenomenon for phenomenology, theory that explains the process of, this is mainly for grounded theory, culture sharing pattern for ethnography, a case for case study of the phenomenon that you want to study for your participants, for example, physicians, medical students, nurses, and so on, at research site, at Jordan University Hospital, necessarily at tertiary care hospital or teaching hospital, or any other research site that you want to conduct your study in. So this is the general formula that you can use to formulate your research question in qualitative research. In this slide, I put like some examples for papers that use quantitative research methodology. I put an example for every type or form of qualitative research. Firstly for ethnography, second one for case study, third one for analytic research, fourth one for phenomenological study, and the last one for grounded theory study. You can, at this stage, have a look at pick one paper and have a look at this paper, what are the methodologies used. I encourage you throughout this course to pick qualitative research papers and read the methods section in this paper and apply what we have learned in the class in these papers and to see how the theoretical knowledge is applied and research and practice. And here are some examples you can use. And there are also many examples you can check throughout Google Scholar and through PubMed and many other databases you are familiar with. So regarding data collection and methods in qualitative research, it is different from data collection methods in quantitative research would depend mainly on questionnaires. Here we are talking about in qualitative research about observations, about interviews, whether it's an individual interviews or one-to-one interviews or focus group interviews, and document review or analysis. So there is a separate lecture for data collection methods in qualitative research throughout the course, and we will talk about them in details in that lecture. So here is the explanation for the previous slide. The observations in which the researcher takes field notes on the activities and behavior of the individuals at the research site. In these field notes, so they call it as a field notes. It's a very important concept in qualitative research, is the field notes. You need to be aware of it. The researcher records in an unstructured or semi-structured way activities at the research site. Interviews. The researcher conducts face-to-face interviews with participants. Interviews participant by telephone, maybe it could be in person or telephone interviews, or engaged in focus group interviews, as we said, with 6 to 8 interviewees in each group. And the researcher in this case will be what we call the moderator of the focus group or the facilitator of this focus group. These interviews involve unstructured and generally open-ended questions. So it includes open-ended questions rather than yes or no questions, or closed-ended questions that are few in number and intended to elicit views and opinions from the participants. And these research questions are mainly related to topic or phenomenon or event under investigation, and they call it in the literature as the interview guide. So interview guide, it's comprises the list of questions that is used by the interviewer in the interview to ask the participants about phenomenon under investigation. And these interviews, we are going to analyze them using thematic analysis to answer the research questions. The last one is called document review or analysis, where the researcher may collect documents, and these may be public documents in newspaper reports, letters, and mails. But most commonly in qualitative research, we use the second one, which is interviews, whether an individual interviews or focus group interviews. Again, briefly about data analysis in qualitative research. Data analysis in qualitative research is an ongoing process involving continual reflection about the data, asking analytic questions, and writing memos during the study. So we depend, as we said, on qualitative research on field notes, writing memos during the study, and you need to know that it's an ongoing process. So it's not an separate activity. In the next point, you can say that it's data analysis in qualitative research is not sharply divided from other activities such as collecting data. So you are going to collect your data through interviews or focus groups or whatever type of data collection that you are planning to use. And while you are doing your data collection, you can start your data analysis. So they are, let's say, could happen simultaneously, data collection and data analysis in qualitative research. So the first step in qualitative data analysis is to develop thorough and comprehensive descriptions of the phenomenon under study, which is called thick description. So as we said, qualitative research, one of the main features of qualitative research is thick descriptions. And we are going to talk about throughout this course about the main methods that's used in data analysis and qualitative research, which is called thematic analysis or content analysis. In thematic analysis, from its name, you are going to analyze your data and to produce themes. And these themes, you are going to produce several themes from the data that you collect. And you give these themes names. And when you want to describe each theme, you provide a thick description for this theme and provide a quotation from the participants' own words. So qualitative research process includes selection of topic and problem, which is called problem identification, Justify significance of the study. Design your study. Identify and gain access to subjects. Select study subjects and data using mainly purpose of sampling and qualitative research. Analyze your data using thematic analysis. Then interpret the results and write your discussion and conclusion. So the approach to qualitative research. You need to know that there is no one way you can do qualitative research. There are many types of qualitative research, and what determines the type of qualitative research that you will use based on your research question. So as we said, if you are going to understand the lived experience of intensive care units regarding communication, for example, and their units, you are going to choose phenomenology. And if you are going to generate theory regarding particular process, you are going to be directed toward grounded theory research, and so on. And we will talk about that in details throughout this course. Another important point that qualitative research design is important. So that means that the initial plan for research cannot be tightly prescribed. All phases of the process may change or shift after the researchers enter the field and begin to collect data. So one of the most important features of qualitative research is that it's emergent design. In this slide, we will talk about another difference between quantitative and qualitative research. There are many differences between qualitative and quantitative research, and we mentioned that in a previous slide. However, I put in this slide the difference between quantitative and qualitative research regarding the design of the study, or the study design. So there is a key difference between quantitative and qualitative research in regard to flexibility of the design. So if you see in the slide, quantitative research, the study design is stable from the beginning to end, and participant responses do not influence or determine how and which questions researchers ask next. So we have a tool, if you remember from quantitative research, or a questionnaire, and you have different questions, and your responsibility as a researcher to ask the participants these questions as they are in the tool. And study design is subject to statistical assumptions and conditions. So it's something fixed, it's stable regarding the study design of quantitative research. However, if you remember from the previous slide, we said that a qualitative research design is emergent. So some aspects of a qualitative research are flexible. For example, the addition, exclusion, or wording of particular interview questions. So sometimes while you are doing a qualitative research and you are doing an interview with your participants, so you think that there is it's worth to add some questions to the interview guide to elicit particular or responses of the participants regarding an important issue regarding the research questions, for example. So you are going to add some questions. So this is something emergent or something flexible, which is different from quantitative research. So participant responses affect how and which questions researchers ask next. So study design is iterative. So if you remember, we said that one of the key features of qualitative research is iteration, which means the data collection and research questions are adjusted according to what is learned during the research process. So in this slide, you need to know an important point, which is the difference in study design between the quantitative and the qualitative research. While quantitative research has a stable design, qualitative research has emergent and flexible design. So again, what research question can qualitative research best answer? You need to consider the following: the lived experience. As you will see throughout the lecture, the course is associated with phenomenology, insider perspective of reality, which is what we call IMIC, which is a perspective of the participants rather than the perspective of the researcher. And we talked about that previously. Context is a very important issue in qualitative research. It's a contextual research rather than measurement-oriented research, such as quantitative research. So the information gathered by actually talking directly to people and seeing them behave and act within their context. This is what differentiates qualitative research from quantitative research. Qualitative sampling, the type of sampling that's mainly used in qualitative research, as you will see, it is purposive sampling. Purposive sampling, it's choosing your sample or your participants to match the aim and objectives of your research. So your participants should have an expert, or they should be an expert, or they should have the experience that match the aim and objectives of your research, so that they can give you rich information regarding your research topic. Another type of sampling that can be used in qualitative research is convenience sampling, which is choosing the participants who are readily accessible or available. So we have two types of sampling. Purposive sampling, which is provides additional advantage over convenience sampling of facilitating the selection of participants whose qualities or experiences are required for the study, or as we said, match the objectives and aims of your study, so they can give you rich information regarding your topic. Convenience sampling allows the researcher to select participants who are readily accessible or available, as we said, and in general we can classify them as non-probability sampling, which is different from quantitative research, which, if you remember, depends on probability sampling. In this slide, we will talk about an important concept that you will see in almost every qualitative research resource, about what we call rigor of a qualitative research. Rigor of a qualitative research refers to quality of the research that's performed using qualitative research methods. And in the following slides, we will talk also about related concept to this issue, which is called trustworthiness of a qualitative research. Trustworthiness of qualitative research refer also to quality of your research, of your qualitative research, and there are several concepts that you can depend on to determine if the qualitative research is trustworthy or not. So there are several strategies as well to help you achieve rigor in your qualitative research, and each one of these relate to one of these four components that we will talk about them in the next slide, in the slide about trustworthiness of qualitative research. Firstly, clear descriptions of the sample necessary for the study to be meaningful, indication of how and why sample was chosen. So you need in qualitative research an important issue to be transparent in describing your methods. Who are the participants? Why you select those participants? What are the place of conducting your study? There are several details you need to mention in your qualitative research report too, so that your study will be considered as a trustworthy study. Engagement with others, such as multiple researchers, in order to quote or discuss data widely. The use of quotations in the representations of data findings. An important point in qualitative research, if you have a look at any qualitative research paper, you can see that they analyze the data, the textual data, using thematic analysis, and they start to represent quotations from the participant onwards to reflect this theme. So also an assessment of a researcher group or researcher assumption about the data, peer review of findings, clearly defined study design, and an important issue lastly, which is triangulation. And triangulation, what you need to know, it's looking at the phenomenon or investigating the event from different angles, measures, methods, or researchers. So from the definition you can see that there are several types of triangulation. We have what we call data triangulation, by using different sources of data. We have methodological triangulation or methods triangulation, which is defined as using more than one methods, such as mixed method approach. We have what we call investigator triangulation or researcher triangulation, which is using more than one researcher to assess the credibility of the study. And it helps to reduce the researcher bias, which is one of the main issues in qualitative research, researcher bias, as is the researcher as the main instrument in qualitative research, as we said previously. And lastly, we have theoretical triangulation, which means using different theories or different conceptual frameworks in your study, in your qualitative research. In this slide, we will talk about an important issue in qualitative research, which is what we call trustworthiness of qualitative research. And we already just mentioned this in, when we talked about rigor or quality of qualitative research. And if you remember from quantitative research, there is no such concept that can be used in trustworthiness of quantitative research, but there is a similar concept if you remember about validity or reliability of the instrument or the questionnaire that you will use in quantitative research. There is particular measurements for validity that ensure that your instrument is valid and your instrument is reliable, and this can be measured in numbers. However, when we talk about qualitative research, we talk about different things. We talk about 4 components. These 4 components in qualitative research include credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability. So, if you found that these criteria found in the qualitative research report, you can say yes, this qualitative research is a trustworthy qualitative research or a good quality qualitative research. We'll start with the first one, which is called credibility. Credibility, from its name, it's the confidence that can be placed in the truth of the research findings. So credibility establishes whether the research findings represent plausible information drawn from the participants' original data and is correct. So we talk about correct interpretation of the participants' original view. So what does that mean? Credibility means it's how the researcher confident in the truth of the research study findings. So the question is, how do you know that your findings are true and accurate? How the findings that result from your qualitative research is true and accurate? And as you will see also, there are in different books and different articles, there are several techniques or several methods that can be used, for example, to achieve credibility, which is different from the techniques that can be used to achieve transferability and dependability and confirmability. Regarding credibility, to ensure the truth of your findings, you can use what we call triangulation. Triangulation is examining the phenomenon from different angles, which could be methods triangulation, as we said in the previous slide, could be investigator triangulation or researcher triangulation, data triangulation, and theoretical triangulation. So firstly, credibility, which you need to know that it's equivalent to what we call internal validity in quantitative research, can be achieved using triangulation. Secondly, we are talking about transferability. Transferability, which is versus external validity, or what we call generalization in quantitative research. It refers to the possibility that a qualitative study theoretical position can be used in other contexts or with other population groups, and that findings can be applied to other contexts, cohorts, or population groups. So, transferability is how the qualitative researcher demonstrates that the research study findings are applicable to other contexts. In this case, other contexts can mean similar situations, similar population, and similar phenomena. In this case, how can you achieve or ensure the transferability of your research? You can use what we call thick description, and it's a very important issue, what we call thick description. So you need to describe the context of performing the study in details. This is what we call thick description. So thick description is one of the criteria that can be used to achieve transferability in qualitative research. Thirdly, we are talking about dependability, which is versus reliability in quantitative research. Refers whether study findings could be achieved and the working methods repeated were another researcher to conduct the same study, which is, if you remember, equivalent to reliability and quantitative research. How it can be achieved? By making what we call audit trail, which is documenting almost every detail in doing and performing your research. So if any other researcher wanted to replicate the study, they should have enough information from your research reports to do so and obtain similar findings as your study. So dependability can be achieved also by what we call audit trail. Lastly, the last component of trustworthiness is confirmability, which is versus to objectivity in quantitative research. And as we said that qualitative research is of subjective nature, so your research findings should be neutral. So what does that mean? The findings of the qualitative research should depend or based on participant responses and not any potential bias from the researcher. So in qualitative research, the researcher should address the participants' viewpoints, participants' perception, rather than his or her own views or perceptions regarding the topic under investigation. This is what we call confirmability. So confirmability ensures that the study findings are clearly representative of the participant views rather than the researcher's preferences. And how this can be done? So also by audit trail. So audit trail, you need to highlight every step of data analysis that was made in your research. By doing this, you can establish that the research study findings accurately represent participants' responses rather than researcher own motivations or own preferences. So again, an important part of this lecture and this course in general is trustworthiness of qualitative research, and the main component of trustworthiness, which are credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability. What are their definitions? How can they be achieved? Is a very important part you need to understand in this lecture and throughout the whole course. So again, this table represents the quality and rigor in qualitative versus quantitative research. What are the different concepts that are used in qualitative and quantitative? Firstly, in qualitative research, we use credibility, which is equivalent to internal validity. In quantitative research, transferability or applicability in qualitative research, which is equivalent to external validity in quantitative research. Dependability or consistency is it's equivalent to reliability in quantitative research. Confirmability or neutrality in qualitative research is equivalent to objectivity in quantitative research. We need these components. They are very important, and you will use them throughout the course to assess when you read a qualitative research paper. You need these four criteria to assess the quality or rigor of this qualitative research and to check if this study is trustworthy, of good quality or not. You need these four criteria: credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability. So in this table you can see the strategies that can be employed to achieve the four criteria of trustworthiness in qualitative research. Firstly, the credibility, as we said, can be achieved through triangulation. Here in this, additional strategies also have been added, like member checking. Member checking is a strategy that used frequently in qualitative research, which is called as a participant validation, where the results of your qualitative research are returned to the participant to check for them and to check the accuracy of them. Transferability, as we said, providing thick description. Dependability, creating an audit trail. Confirmability by triangulation, and reflexivity of the researcher. So feasibility is an important issue in not only in qualitative research, but even in any type of research, not only qualitative but in quantitative as well. So this feasibility should be considered early in the design phase of the study. You need to take into consideration several issues such as staffing requirements for data collection. You need to talk about budget constraints, the required time frame as well. For example, asking a group of participants to complete a 100-page questionnaire survey or attend a 2-day focus group meeting is unlikely to be considered feasible by most people. So you need to make your research project feasible in the available time frame and in the available budget constraints. And also, when considering the feasibility of the research, also the limitations of researcher expertise must also be taken into account. So this is different from so the feasibility is different among different type or different researchers, if he is an experienced researcher or a novice researcher. So all of these should be taken into consideration when you assess or when you address the feasibility of your research project. So the limitations of qualitative research. The main limitation of qualitative research is limited generalizability. So it's applicable to the context that only performed in. So the findings of qualitative research cannot be extended to wider populations with the same degree of certainty than that quantitative analysis can do. Finally, check your understanding question. Which of the following is true about qualitative research? Firstly, data are usually collected in a laboratory setting. As we said in this lecture, that qualitative research is a naturalistic design. Secondly, focus is on studying the whole. We talked about holistic or whole picture of the phenomenon. Focus is on generalization. We just said that one of the main limitations of qualitative research is limited generalizability. Qualitative research is deductive, and we already talked about this. We said that qualitative research is an inductive research where we can use qualitative research to generate a theory, which is different from quantitative research, which is deductive, that can be used to test an already existing theory. So From in this slide, the right answer supposed to be is in focus B. Focus is on studying the whole. So the answer, as we said, is B. Qualitative research focuses on understanding the whole, which is consistent with the holistic philosophy. Here are the references for this lecture. Finally, thank you very much. I hope you found this lecture interesting. If you have any question regarding the lecture, regarding the course in general, you can contact me via my email, which you can find it on the syllabus. And you also can send me your question on the discussion forum on the e-learning portal, and we can have a discussion on this portal if you need that. Thank you very much.